me just say briefly then. I admire people who would take off on a weekend when you could be out going to a game or taking a Saturday off. I appreciate people who come to Jackson and participate in public policy. Now, when I was in high school, I got to do this in something we called Youth Congress. And I guess Youth Congress we don't have anymore. And so now it's Youth Legislature. And then also when I was at Boys State, I was in the state Senate. But the point is, here I am, a federal legislator, having served in the House first and then in the Senate, also having served in the state Senate before that. And I really got my start in talking about bills at a place just like we are at today, where we talked about issues. So, this to me is part of being a well-rounded student. And I'm sure you're involved in clubs, I'm sure you're involved in volunteer work, sports perhaps, theater, dancing, you never know. But it's okay to be interested in politics and government. So I commend you for that, and probably there's some people back in your schools who don't understand why you would be interested in politics. And what an interesting, pivotal week for you to be here in Jackson on the week that we've had an example of the orderly transfer of power. And let me just say this. I go to capital cities all over the world. It's something I get a chance to do. I know members of parliaments all over the world, Asia, Europe, South America. And it is okay in the United States to be an ex-leader. As a matter of fact, we honor our former presidents. President Bush, we got 2 ex-President Bushes. We're soon going to have ex-President Obama, former President Clinton. We honor them. They are part of our culture. In some countries, Russia, for example, to give up power is to them to lose everything. And on January 20th, when all of those presidents and former presidents are gathered in front of the United States Capitol, and there's the tableau there of the loser and the winner being on the same platform, that is a profound statement to the rest of the world that the people decide things in the United States of America, and both sides accept the results. It makes me proud to be an American. We have history students here, so Ray, help me out. I want to tell you a brief story from 1787. So raise your hand. What happened in 1787? Okay, right here.
George Washington was elected president.
Well, okay, that's George Washington, our first president, based on something that happened in 1787. Yep. The Constitution was ratified in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Something else happened in Philadelphia in 1776. We had the Declaration of Independence. Wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. We had the Articles of Confederation. Didn't quite work, and so they said, we'll go back to Philadelphia and we'll fix them. Instead, they came up with a Constitution. And what's the famous remark by Ben Franklin when he was asked what sort of government we would have? He said to the woman, "Madam, you have a republic if you can keep it." Now, I think people like you, the next generation, somebody may be up here making a speech in 2 or 3 decades to a very similar audience. You'll make the decision whether we can keep this republic. We were the only place in the world at that point that believed in representative democracy. You could look all over the world, and only those 13 colonies clinging to the eastern seaboard of North America believed in that. But they said, we will be they were correct. And 2¼ centuries later, everybody wants to be like us. But there was a conversation in 1787. There was a man, our third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. He wasn't there. He missed the whole thing. Where was Thomas Jefferson? France. Oh, I love these history students. Okay, so he missed it. He was having coffee with George Washington in 1787, and he was asking George Washington about the United States Senate. Where did you come up with the idea of having a U.S. House of Representatives elected every 2 years, shorter terms, elected by the people at that point, but the Senate chosen by the state legislatures at that point, and serving 6-year terms? He said, what were you thinking when you devised it so differently in this bicameral legislature for the country? And George Washington said, well, Tom, why did you just pour your coffee out of your coffee cup into the saucer? This really happened. They used to do that back then. If you pour your coffee out of your cup into your saucer now, your teacher will chastise you. Your mom will tell you that's not good manners. But they used to do that then. And Thomas Jefferson said, I did it to cool my coffee. He picked the saucer and poured it back into the cup, and it was cooler. And George Washington said, that's why we invented a United States Senate, to cool off the passions of the day, to slow things down, and to make things more deliberate. So those of you who didn't get your bills taken up and debated, don't feel like the lone stranger. This has happened since the time of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. And it happened by design. There is a part of the Congress that is more in touch with the people because they have to run every 2 years. And there's a part of the Congress, the United States Senate, that is intended for more deliberate action. That's why we have to have 60 votes instead of a simple majority, which would be 51. Nevertheless, I don't want you to think, as they seem to think in some of the cable shows and on some television shows, that we have not gotten anything done in the United States House and Senate and in Washington, D.C. The popular view is it's all gridlock, it's all partisan bickering, and nothing ever gets passed, nothing ever gets accomplished. So I just made a little list of things we passed just during this Congress. This Congress will end in December. A Congress lasts how many years? 2. A session of Congress lasts how many years? 1. Oh, good. And so at any rate, during this 2-year Congress, we have done this. A multi-year highway bill, first one in years and years. We've done rail reform. We've done a bill protecting victims of human trafficking. We've done trade promotion authority to provide for negotiation of free trade agreements. We've done Medicare reform. We've done VA reform. All of these have been passed by a Republican House, by a Republican Senate, requiring 60% of the vote in the Senate. And these Republican bills have all been signed by our Democratic President of the United States, Barack Obama. We've even passed education reform. Now, we have people here from private schools, parochial schools, and public schools. And several years ago, under George W. Bush, we passed No Child Left Behind. I don't know, any teachers here ever heard of No Child Left Behind? Well, it turns out that it maybe wasn't the most popular education bill in the history of mankind. And so it needed to be fixed. And here's what we did: a remarkable thing under a Democratic administration and a Republican Congress. We returned power to the states. We said there's not going to be any Common Core mandate from Washington, D.C. That's been repealed. If you get Common Core, that's decided by the state level now. Doesn't come from Washington. And we did what the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal all agree is the greatest transfer of education power away from Washington to the states and school boards in a generation. So don't take my word for it. Take the word of our most conservative and our most liberal national publications. Again, passed in a Republican House, passed in a Republican Senate, with Patty Murray, a liberal Democrat from Washington, and Lamar Alexander, a conservative Republican from Tennessee, presiding over that issue, and Barack Obama signed it. We came together as liberals, conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and passed a major education reform in a time when everybody thought there was nothing but gridlock. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what people said Wednesday morning early. I stayed up. I don't know if you know, I was chairman of this National Republican Senatorial Committee, and my team was able to stay in the majority against some pretty strong odds. So I was staying up late, and then I said, well, you know, if Donald Trump has won, I want to hear his statement. And so that's why I might still be a little tired. You know, when you get to be 65, you don't bounce back as well as when you're 17, 18, and 19. But I stayed up, and I couldn't have been prouder of what Donald Trump said about pulling together. And then the next morning, I was ready to have my little press conference about the